Welcome back to Screen Diaries. Today I'm going to be doing a breakdown of Severance Season 2, Episode 1, as well as sharing some theories and more. Before I dive into that, can we talk about the Season 1 finale? As we all know, Severance ended on one of the biggest cliffhangers ever. The finale was by far the best written finale I've ever seen. So the episodes are going to be released weekly. I would have preferred small batches, maybe 3 at a time, but this is how it was set up. We open with Andy Mark S. waking up in the elevator of Lumen, and he frantically runs the halls to look for his team. I really like this opening scene as it depicts Mark in this state of confusion, and the audience is just as confused. So it's a cool mirroring effect to be feeling the same thing as the character in that moment. He arrives at the wellness department and realizes the paintings and doors are all gone. As he's standing there, you see a figure behind him. At first I thought, is that Milchick? But then I wondered if this could be a possible clone. The stance seems so much like Mark S., but I'm wondering who this could be. He heads back to the MDR department to find his new coworkers, and Milchick appears with blue balloons and a smile welcoming him back. You see a blue theme here, which typically symbolizes peace and trust. Could this be some sort of peace offering for Milchick? Interesting. He walks with Milchick to his office, and as they arrive, Mark is introduced to a young girl named Miss Wong. She introduces herself as deputy manager, so she's Milchick's replacement. I immediately was like, is this Mark and Gemma's daughter? There are some other reasons why I thought this, but we'll get to those a little later. From the beginning of the episode, you clearly see Milchick's position of power has changed, but when he walks into his office, he confirms it to Mark S. that he's now managing the severed floor. Miss Cobell is no longer with the company. Mark doesn't waste any time before asking where his coworkers are and demanding they be brought back. Milchick tells Mark it's been 5 months, and what they pulled was one of the most painful moments in the history of the company. He tells him his coworkers weren't fired, but apparently on the outside, they're admired and looked at as heroes. He shows him this newspaper titled, Innies Blow the Whistle. The whole situation is called the Macrodat Uprising, and they are now known as the face of the severance reform. And you know what? I don't buy this. This newspaper looks so fake in Photoshop, so I guess we'll see how that unravels as time goes on. Milchick seems to be taking a more apologetic and kind approach this season. He tells Mark how the company thinks it was a horrible decision to have Harmony working for them, and they know that she was on the outside interacting with him and his sister, and had formed an erotic fixation on his innie and outie in hopes that they could be a throuple. And remember also, season 1 ended with Cobell running into the building to help Milchick stop Dylan in the control room. So what happened after that? So continuing on, Mark is like, I don't care about none of that. Where's my team? And that's when Milchick said they all refused to come back except Mark, who actually begged to be brought back. You can tell Mark doesn't believe this and asks to hear it directly from them, but Milchick says that's not possible. Mark S. heads back to the office and becomes acclimated with his new co-workers, Gwendolyn R., Mark W., and Dario R. Gwendolyn seems to have a heavy interest in how it is on the outside, asking Mark S. questions about it immediately. Miss Wong appears and invites them to do a team-building exercise, rolling a bright red ball to each other, with each person sharing facts about themselves. She mentioned she was a crossing guard at her school, and I'm like, why isn't she still in school? Now this clip right here is so funny. Mark W. asks, why are you a child? Where she answers, because of when I was born. And I thought that was such a funny moment. Mark W. also mentioned his department was shut down and him and Gwendolyn were transferred, which he was surprised about because he assumed he would be retiring. It's Mark S.'s turn, and he gets a flash of Gemma and says he's happy to have met 4 new friends. And Miss Huang quickly corrects him and says, I'm not your friend. I'm your supervisor. That little smile leaves her face and lets him know who's in charge. It's end of day and time for Mark to go home, and he looks confused even turning the lights off. He gets in the elevator, opens his eyes, and is right back there at Lumen. They don't cut to outie Mark, so it leads me to believe maybe they're not letting Mark leave. So hopefully in season 2 or the rest of the season we see what outie Mark is up to, if he's safe. As day 2 comes to a close, Mark is writing something on a sticky note while Mark W. shares that his old team were dirtbags and they never met their quota. He says that Mark S. seems to really like his team team and he's sorry they're not there. But Mark S still decides to slide that note into Mark W's jacket pocket before leaving for the day to frame him in hopes of bringing his old team back. Well, this ended before it could even start. The next day, Mark is immediately met with Milchick, holding the note, letting him know his plan did not work. Mark tries to laugh it off, but neither Milchick or the coworkers are buying it. Mark S has no explanation but to plead to Milchick and stress how much he wants his team back. He is not giving up. Milchick snatches Mark S's badge off, and he's demoted from department chief, and Mark W is promoted in his place. But this doesn't sway Mark. He laughs and asks Milchick if he's seen what he'd done to the kitchen, which was really to create a distraction, as we cut to him running to Milchick's office where he connected to the speaker to talk to the board, begging them to bring his team back. Milchick disconnects the speaker and calmly escorts Mark to the elevators where Mark asks, "Are you firing me?" Mark is then brought to what seems like a new floor with a new painting of Kier holding a sword with 4 people behind him with cuts and bruises, which we learn is painting of Kier basically forgiving the severed reformers. Dylan quickly arrives, then Irving, still screaming, "Bert!" Not Helly just yet. Then Mark starts to walk away from the elevator and she finally arrives. The hug is pretty awkward here, but yay, the team is back together. They meet back in the office and now Irving is taking this pretty hard. He locks himself in the bathroom. The replacement employees are gone and I'm wondering where they are. Miss Wong comes and escorts the team to the break room to see Milchick. When they enter, this isn't the break room we've seen before. Milchick is standing there with the biggest smile on his face. He tells them Mark's frustrations have been heard and turns on a video that Milchick says will be watched by every new Lumen employee moving forward. Titled "Lumen is Listening." The video plays and we meet the Lumen Administrative Building Branch 501, which is voiced, by the way, by Keanu Reeves. We see all of the changes of the building since 1870 and find out the basement floor is one of the premier severed workspaces amongst the 206 other countries in which Lumen operates. It's then highlighted what the MDR team did to positively impact and change the company by the Macrodat uprising. He shows clips of each team member during the uprising, Irving's iconic "let's burn the building to the ground" speech, Mark's speech with optics and design, and finally the kiss between Mark and Helly. Milchick gives a speech, says he doesn't want to be a jailer, and presents something that could change the trajectory, and that's their enemies will actually get a chance at the end of each day to stay or leave. And he says he'll let them go if they do. He shares that the severed floor and break room will no longer have cameras or microphones. He's proposing a fresh start with all these new incentives to keep them working there, but by choice this time. But remember, this is the break room. All of these positive and beautiful words and promises in a room that at one point in time held so much negativity and pain. As Milchick leaves, the team is left sitting with each other, and this is when they ask what happened. Now, oddly enough, Mark S was the only person that was up front. Irving hesitates and doesn't really say much. Helly completely makes up a lie about living in an apartment and having a boring life, laid up in her sweats and t-shirt, and I was like, wow. It seemed like Irv didn't really believe her, and I think that's why he held back his story. Helly and Mark take a walk where Mark shares his plans about wanting to find Casey after finding out she's his wife. Helly seems bitter and a bit jealous about it, but agrees to help, just acting very off. Could this be Helena and she's trying to control the situation here by presenting to help? Or is this really Helly based on, the jealous response? I can't tell just yet, but she makes it a point to say the Audis are not them and they're not good people essentially. But she seems to be projecting and actually talking about herself. In the meantime, Dylan catches up to Irv, who is trying to leave, and convince him to stay. Irv opens up to Dylan about the paintings on the outside and how he saw Bert, who appeared to be married, and his openness with Dylan in this moment confirmed to me he may not have trusted Helly while they were in the break room. Dylan tries to stop him from leaving by encouraging him to look into the answers about these paintings, and they have this really close moment emphasizing what their friendship means to each other. And this is one of those moments and one of those things that I love about this show, the love and strength between these friendships. They're interrupted by Miss Wong, who lets Dylan know Milchick would like to speak to him, and he leaves Irv by the door. We're met with the title name of the episode, Hello, Miss Cobell. And you see that's because since taking her place, Milchick has to still see Cobell's name on the welcome screen of his computer, and he's trying to get it fixed, but you can tell he's so annoyed by it. Dylan demands an apology from Milchick for destroying his belt, but Milchick says, I have something better for you. He tells Dylan his wife's name is Gretchen, and he shows Dylan blueprints for a new renovation called the Audi Family Visitation Suite. Dylan asks, "So, can I see my family?" Where Milchick responds, "If you take the name of the room at face value, then yes." He does what seems to be a really nice thing, but tells Dylan to keep it a secret to avoid any kind of resentment. So now, both Dylan and Helly are keeping secrets. Wondering if this is going to cause a division in the group. We cut to Miss Wong playing a ring toss game with what looks like Kier in the center, and it really raises the question of, who is she? Is she really a young girl? Is she a clone? Is she severed? We jump back to the crew together, sitting at their desks, looking content. So now, they all have a new motive to stay. Mark wants to get more answers about Miss Casey, who's his wife, and get her out of there. Helly has agreed to help with this. Her motive is the only one that isn't strong for me and a little odd. As much as she wanted to leave, her reason for staying is to help Mark, who she likes, save his wife. We'll come back to this. Irving wants answers about the dark paintings and how they connect to Lumen with the hallway and the elevator. Dylan has an interest in this new facility and the possibility of meeting his family. So that's their new mission and motive, and it makes sense. We end with Mark working under a name Cold Harbor, where we're met with a flash under the same file name of Miss Casey. If you remember in season 1, you saw Kier's reflection in the screen, sort of watching them do their work. Was Mark just seeing things, or is Gemma watching him? Or is this a part of her being sent to the testing floor? I went back to season 1, and there was a moment Miss Cobell was watching a wellness session between Mark and Miss Casey, and it seems like Miss Casey kind of broke character with Mark, which abruptly prompted Miss Cobell to ask Milchick to send her back down to testing. It's like she saw something that shouldn't have happened, so I'm really looking forward to seeing the unraveling of Miss Casey's character and how their relationship came to be. Back to my point about Miss Wong possibly being Mark S. and Casey's daughter. Did anyone notice that moment during the team building exercise where there was this moment where Mark looked at her in sort of a recall way, like he knew her from somewhere? And Mark S. did mention him and Casey tried for a baby, but it didn't work. I noticed we didn't get our usual opening credit scene with the music and everything. We just got the title card, Severance, and I definitely know this was intentional. And I think it may change through the season, but for now it's simple, and I think it's going to symbolize where we are in each episode. Wiping the original opening credit scene is like a fresh start. Like Milchick mentioned, episode 1 may have seemed slow to some, but based on what they've shown us in season 1, I know this is all intentional and setting up the next steps to blow our minds. I think this was well done with the setup of the new motive because it has to make sense why they all decided to stay. And I think the intentionality of why they chose to stay was well done. Some things I'll be looking out for. Where's Cobell? With Milchick unable to even get her name off of his screen, I feel like this was foreshadowing for her still being around. The last time we saw her was when she ran into Lumen to help Milchick stop Dylan. Are they actually famous on the outside? And is Lumen actually cheering them on like they claim? Is Milchick genuine? Will we get an Audi story on Milchick even though he isn't severed? What happened to the replacement co-workers? Are they real? Is time being manipulated in some way? Is cloning going on? So there's a lot of questions and things that I'm going to be looking out for. Such a great kickoff to the new season. We got some answers, new characters, and lots of questions. This show seems to be slowly getting the recognition it deserves, and I'm so happy to see that. And I foresee some awards this time around since they didn't get any before. This is one of my favorite shows. I'm so looking forward to watch this season unravel. I'm so happy the show is back. I'm going to be covering this season and breaking down each episode. So I would love for you to come on this journey with me. Let me know in the comments your thoughts, theories, questions. I want to hear what you think. If you saw something that I missed, this is going to be a good season. My name is Kamara. Thanks again for watching Screen Diaries, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.